Welcome to another season of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. This program is brought to you by Right Career Fit. Listen and learn, and remember to have that very important career conversation with a career professional.
Every storyteller knows the story they want to tell. And so my job as a guide is to listen that story out of you. There's a magic in story, and when we use it the right way, the stories help us to be seen and heard and understood and listened to. The world wants to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. I am Hoda, your host. I look forward to another season of career chats with international professionals who will inspire you to take your journey to the next level. My guest today is Diane Wyzga. The arc of Diane's professional career stretches from serving as U.S. Navy nurse, corporate businesswoman, speaker, educator, lawyer, litigation consultant, podcaster, and storyteller. The other arc is that of a woman who backpacked across Europe, gone scuba diving on the Continental Shelf, learned to fly a plane, parachuted out of a perfectly good plane, walked the Camino de Santiago, a pilgrimage of 500 miles across Spain, and much more. Diane prides herself on showing up. In today's episode, you will learn more about what showing up means, and the way that Diane sees it is being scared but not afraid, because you just fall down 7 and get up 8. That's been the story of Diane's life. When a person or opportunity beckoned and she said yes, that's the place where her story belonged and changed. For 30 years, Diane has helped professionals to take their story from a message only they could hear to the publishing world, the courtroom, hospitals, board meetings, the airways, and much more. Stories that swayed juries, built markets, spread ideas, changed things. Today, Diane helps others become successful story creators. It's a niche the world needs, helping people find the words they didn't know they had to connect with, engage, and influence their audience.
Hi, Diane, and welcome to Hoda's Career Info. I thank you so much for your time and your willingness to share your expertise right here. And without further ado, I want to ask you, what is your career term and how would you define it from your own perspective, not the Google perspective, or if I were to open a dictionary, what would you have to say about that?
I don't know if we'd find it on Google, but we might. I call myself a story guide. And the reason I do that is because I was trained years ago in story with the belief that every client, every storyteller knows the story they want to tell. And so my job as a guide is to listen that story out of you. Other people call me a story doula. And for those people who don't know, a doula is a midwife. And so I also midwife the stories that people have to tell.
So Diane, story doula, you believe like me, I guess, in the value of sharing stories and listening to other people's stories. And in this episode, I'd like to invite you to share your story with us. And within it, perhaps a message that you can pass on to the audience.
We are simpatico that way, Hoda, in the work that we do and the way in which we give that as a gift to our clients. So I'm delighted to have an opportunity to join you on the journey. I've been a storyteller through many stages of my professional career as a nurse, as a lawyer, as a businesswoman, as a teacher and educator, and also as a volunteer in domestic abuse shelters for women who have left abusive relationships. And what I learned was that we are a story meaning people. In other words, we are always looking for the meaning in things we don't understand. So if you go back, to our ancestors who looked up into the heavens and saw comets and wondered, what does that mean? Or there was a crop failure, wondered, what does that mean? And an effort to create meaning about things that they didn't understand, they created stories, the myths and the gods and narratives. And those stories were designed as a way to connect with other humans. What, you too? I thought I was the only one. And so what I learned as I was going through many career changes was that stories really do help people. And they do that by connecting, by integrating what we know with what we understand. But it took me a big part of my lifetime to find my voice and my purpose as a storyteller, because I grew up in a situation, in a generation where women's voices were shut down. You weren't invited to speak, or if you were invited to speak, you weren't invited to use the power of your voice, your real authentic voice. And so over the course of my life, I actually had to discover something that I call the sorcery of stories. And that is that there's a magic in story. And when we use it the right way, the stories help us to be seen and heard and understood and listened to. And so over the course of time, looking back, I realized that I had used stories in many, many ways to get people to discover and to deliver their authentic message. And that way they could connect with and they could engage and they could influence their audience. And they could also transform the lives of those that they served. And so for me, it was a very big awakening. We're here on this earth with a voice. We come with this voice. And this voice is our voice, and this voice is very powerful. And if we can discover our true, authentic, powerful voice, we are in a much better position to be seen and heard, to be understood, to be listened to connect, and to engage with others. And so a large part of what I share with my clients has come out of, as I imagine with you and others, has come out of my own learning about why story. It's the who. It's the who of who we are.
Diane, I love how you weaved your story into your message very eloquently. But perhaps I shouldn't be surprised, because you do have a podcast. The name of the podcast is Stories from Women Who Walk. It's very unique for those of you who have not heard of it. Diane, in my opinion, has this astonishing ability to summarize the inspiring stories of women and to leave us with something to think about. And most importantly, you can do that, Diane, in 60 seconds. And I am curious, why did you start this podcast? I encourage everyone to check it out. It's only 60 seconds of your time. Sometimes maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, but really quickly, very quickly, they're usually and loaded with message from the experience of the person you interviewed, Diane. So why did you start this podcast, Diane? And what are you hoping the listeners will learn?
Well, I started it because a friend of mine who I've known for a Canadian friend of mine who was originally one of my storytelling clients said, if you're looking for something to do, and this was 2019, I had relocated to Whidbey Island. I hadn't established myself yet as Watermoon Story Arts. And she said, if you're looking for something to do, I understand that Seth Godin and Akimbo has a podcasting workshop, and maybe you'd like to sign up for that. Well, I did. And what I didn't realize was that the course, as wonderful as it was, and it was wonderful, it was like drinking from a fire hydrant. I mean, it was just from day one. It was us from day one. And they wanted to know, well, what's it for, and who's it for, and why does it matter, and what's the title? And I wasn't prepared for that. I thought I was going to take podcasting 101 that was going to bring me to podcasting 102. And so I thought, I know stories, I know walking, and I'm a woman. So I'm going to call it Stories from Women Who Walk. And the photograph that is on the platform is actually a selfie that I took of myself as I was beginning to go over the Pyrenees mountains. I was walking the Camino de Santiago de Compostela from France to Spain, which ended up being 5 weeks, 500 miles of walking. And so that right there is me. And in the beginning, the first year, I interviewed women who had been walking their lives until life decided to walk them. And then what did they do with that? What was the story they told thereafter? And then after about a year, one of my coaches said, you know what you're really good at? I mean, you're good at the guests, but what you're really good at is distilling these messages, getting them down to the bare bones that still matter, that still mean something. And why don't you give those 60 seconds a go and see if you can make a go of it? And so I did. I've been at this now 3 years, a little bit more than 3 years. I posted episode 867 this morning. I have a goal of 1,000 episodes by December. And each one, again, is coming out of my experience. And sometimes I feel like I'm teaching myself about something about life as I'm recording the episodes. And what I understand listeners take away is what they need in the message in that moment. So I might intend for motivation or a time out or something to delight you or ponder or a story. And the listener takes out of that what they need. In fact, there's a Jewish saying that when you hear a story, if you are alone or if you're in a group of people, you're to raise your eyes to your God and ask, why did you send me that story at this time? And so that's what I do. I'm a story magician. I share the sorcery of stories, but underneath it all, the desire is still the same. I want us to connect, to engage, to influence, to be of use and good. And so that's my gift to the world. And it's fun.
Well, the important thing is that you are enjoying it as well, isn't it? And it's such an important message. And yes, if I were to take our conversation today and try to put it in 60 seconds, I don't think I can do that or really bring out in it the essence that you managed to bring in Stories from Women Who Walk. So I agree with you on the message. I do take, I think, from the stories when I listen to them, what I need for that day. And so I thank you for putting that podcast out.
Thank you very much for listening.
So you continue with that theme, the storying and the storyism, and then you have engaged storyism that you founded. And I would be curious and share if you could share with the audience, what is engaged storyism all about?
At the end of the day, it is about communication transformation. I think all of us are looking for a way to connect more deeply with others and to be of use in the world, to be heard in the world. So decades before I coined that term, engaged storyism method, I had been practicing it as a nurse, as a lawyer, as a businesswoman. And what I mean by the engaged part of it is make believe you're a doctor and well, a medical doctor, not the other kind of doctor. You are a doctor. So make believe you're a medical doctor. And a patient comes to you and she's complaining of increased thirst and increased urination. And you run diagnostic tests and you determine that she's suffering from diabetes. So you could say, all right, you need to change your diet, you need to add more exercise, and I'm going to give you a course of insulin here. Well, that's one approach. But as a doctor who wants to engage with their patient, you would look into the patient's situation, unique situation, and find out more about her lifestyle. Is she eating alone? Has someone close to her recently died and she is using food in grief? What kind of budget does she have for groceries? Who else is she taking care of so that she's not taking care of herself? And so on. And once you engage in your patient's life and lifestyle, you get more information. And then you can say, all right, what we need to do to put a plan together so that you are healthy is this and this and this. And so what you've done is you've integrated the woman, the patient, with her unique situation. And when you do that, you find the underlying story in a way that will help you help her. Our work, your career literacy, my sourcery of stories is no different. Whether we are putting together a story to be hired as we're looking to be hired in a firm or an organization, if we have an idea to pitch, if we want to share a vision with our team, say we're crafting a keynote, none of those projects are standalone projects. Those are all reflections of what you have to offer. And what you have to offer comes from not only your skills and your abilities, but your unique storyline. So my engaged storyism method is my way of integrating your values, your principles with, that's your who, with what you want to accomplish. And there's your communication transformation. And we do that with critical listening, thoughtful questionings, but most importantly, because I've been in story for 30 years, I make decisive use of the story structure and techniques that are common to the story experience and to the human experience. And so we bring this all the way back to the beginning. My clients then have found the way to get to their origin story. They discover their uniquely powerful voice, and they're able to create a more compelling story that stands in for them. And now they've got a direction. They know what they want to do because they know what drives them. And so again, they have the tools in that story work to be seen and heard and understood and listened to. And at the end of the day, I think that's the only thing we really want. Well, something to do, someone to love, something to look forward to, and to be seen, heard, and understood. So that's, in a nutshell, it's a big nut, is the way in which I work with my clients. I've worked with litigators, business people, and I want to say this quickly because one of the techniques that I use is helping people reduce a big story into 15 seconds, and then we bring it to 30 seconds, 45 seconds. If we worked together in a very short amount of time, you would be able to tell our conversation in 15, 30, 45 seconds, guaranteed.
Well, I kind of picked up on a lot of things from your method. What I am curious, so how long would you need to work with me, let's say, to help me bring our conversation today and be able to summarize it to 15 seconds? Is it like a few sessions, or is it, I'm thinking I need a long time.
No, my guess would be that within the space of an hour, we would easily be able to take this conversation and compress it to its salient points and have you reiterate those or have you tell those in the story in the way that you wanted to tell them, the points that you wanted to bring out. As to how long it takes to work with any client, it really depends on the project. I just had someone approach me to bring a character to life on stage. And that was probably going to take us 3-4 months of working together. On the other hand, I've worked in a short time frame with professionals who want to create an about page, their about story page, or their origin story, or getting the back of a book description written. So it's really client specific and it's project specific. So something like getting ready for a job interview is going to be probably shorter than an about page. But again, it really depends on where the client is in discovering their own story. But I bet in an hour's time, you and I could easily come up with several iterations of this conversation. Guaranteed.
And I like, it's interesting that you added several iterations, because you also mentioned at the beginning that you bring into it what you want. And so I guess the iterations would be depending on where I want my focus to be.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about an origin story, there are many points in our life where this is story. Something was, something happened, something is. There are many points along the timeline of our life where something was, something happened, and something became as a result of that. But the origin story that we want to work with is dependent on how we want to use that. Is it going to be for a job interview? Is it going to be for something that we weave into a keynote? What is the purpose? And so once we know the what's it for, who's it for, why does it matter, we have a better idea and direction on what origin story out of your many in your life is important. The question is, how did you get to carry the medicine? How did you, Dr. Hoda, get to carry the medicine to do what you do? And so if we were to have a conversation about that, I would learn how it is that you came to the point of claiming for yourself career literacy and helping people on the way to that.
I love this. And your examples show us that you are more than supporting job seekers or even career explorers, like I would do with focus on career education and helping them through moving from transitioning either from high school to work life or from work life to retirement. Your examples showed us that your work is beyond that.
It does embrace a wider spectrum. So if someone wants to advance their practice, their business, if they have a cause that they need to talk about, if they have a vision they want to share. So yes, there's a wider perspective there for socially conscious professionals. However, it comes down to the very same thing, which is connecting with people, engaging with them, and then influencing. So in your particular situation, your clients want to find a way to connect with whomever they need to connect with, whether it's getting into college, whether it is getting that job. And then once they find the way to connect with them, how are they going to engage with that person or persons? And with that engagement, then comes the opportunity to influence the listener. And then that's where your storyline is coming in. So I think between the two of us, we work on communication transformation, but perhaps in slightly different audiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. We both focus on the story to support our clients to move forward. For me, it's more zoomed in. One last question about the work you do is, do you have a client age preference, or do you work only with women? Because I know your podcast focuses on women. Or are you open to any clients to just contact you and see if you can help them?
Well, I think the clients that gravitate toward me, like filings to a magnet, tend to be socially conscious professionals, and they tend to be women. Although the person I was talking about with the performing arts idea was a gentleman. And I've done a lot of work over 12 years' time with lawyers, the litigators who were preparing their cases to go to court. And by and large, they were men. So I would say that it's professionals. And I would say that by and large, it's women. And I would say that it tends to be maybe 40s, 40, 45 and up. And I'm just saying they tend to, meaning if I look back on the number of people that I've worked with, that's where the bell curve would be. And then on either side of it, you'd have somewhat different. So what I do is I invite people to come and have a story session with me. And we, in that story session time, we work on what it is that you're trying to do and look at what kind of a fit. Is it a fit that will benefit you as well as me? Can I be of use to you? And that in mind, the current Quarter Moon Story Arts website that's up is being it's being completely demolished and renovated. And I hope to launch it in the next week. So burn it down to the bottom, except for a couple of words, and then bring it back up in a new and improved form.
That sounds good. And I will be sure to put it in the comments section when it's ready to go. No problem there.
Okay, thank you.
Diane, for taking the time to explain your work to me and to the audience. I do have one more question for you, Diane, and that is, and part of my practice also as I support clients is I encourage them to take on challenges or embrace new opportunities. And so do you have any, we know you have your website coming up, which is of course a new challenge for us as we try to figure out what we want in there. What are the challenges that you're hoping to take now, or any ideas or projects to build on your work today or in the near future?
That's a great question. What I've been doing is offering story courses on your legacy story. People they're beyond reluctant. They're beyond resistant about writing their legacy story, their obituary, their eulogy, because we think, oh my God, if I talk about death, I'm going to die. But here's what I tell them. We don't get pregnant by talking about sex. We are not going to die talking about death. And something as important as your own story, setting the record straight, doesn't get written by putting your pen into somebody else's hand. This is a story that is for you to create. And when you come down to an obituary, you don't want to leave that to your beloveds in a time of grief. I mean, it'll just sound like nonsense. So that is the biggest thing I'm working on right now is before I go, this is the legacy story that I like to tell. And it's getting traction. But it'll take time. But it's a worthy challenge.
Well, congratulations on taking on a challenge, because I think that we all agree that's very important on a regular basis to the best of our abilities. And these were all the questions I have for you today, Diane. I, of course, have more, but they probably go beyond the scope of this program. But would you like to wrap up with quote or maybe some bit of advice?
Story, story, story. Bit of advice. I like to say that stories are not for children. Stories started out as being the way that adults connected with each other around a campfire. And when the children were of age to understand, then they were invited to join the tellers and the listeners and be absorbed into the sorcery of stories. And so I would like to encourage everyone to seek out your own story, to know that you came here with a uniquely powerful, authentic voice. And it's up to you to use it because the world wants to hear what you have to say.
Such a wonderful message, Diane. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It was a delight. It was a delight talking with you, and I hope I'm of use to your listeners.
You've been listening to Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. My guest today on Hoda's Career Info coined the term engaged storyism, Diane Wyzga. For her, this term reflects every aspect of her work. You can connect with Diane Wyzga on LinkedIn. Please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, stay inspired and keep moving forward in constructive ways.